Margaret Stern thought she owned Pine Ridge Community, but she made one fatal mistake, breaking into my cabin for her daughter's party. As HOA president, she believed she was untouchable. She had no idea I was a security expert who had rigged every room with the perfect traps. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Jake, and I thought I had found paradise when I bought my little cabin in Pine Ridge Community. Nestled between towering oak trees with a crystal clear lake just 50 yards from my back door, it was everything I had dreamed of after years of city living. What I didn't know was that my peaceful retreat would become a battlefield with the most power-hungry HOA president in history. Margaret Stern ruled Pine Ridge Community like a tyrant queen. At 62, she had silver hair pulled back in a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent scowl. She wore her HOA president badge like a sheriff's star and treated every homeowner like a potential criminal. From the moment I moved in, Margaret made it clear that she saw me as a threat to her perfectly controlled kingdom. It started with small things. A citation for my mailbox being 2 inches too tall. A fine for parking my truck in my own driveway because it was commercial looking. A written warning because my outdoor lights were too bright, at 40 watts. But Margaret's harassment reached a whole new level when she discovered I worked as a security consultant specializing in home protection systems. "We don't need your kind of expertise here," she snapped during one of our encounters. "This is a family community, not some fortress." Little did she know that my expertise would become very relevant very soon. The breaking point came on a Friday in late September. I had been planning a quiet weekend at the cabin, maybe some fishing and reading by the fireplace. I had installed several security cameras around my property after some vandalism incidents, and I was monitoring them from my phone while grocery shopping in town when I saw something that made my blood boil. Margaret's white Mercedes was pulling into my driveway, followed by 3 other cars I recognized as belonging to her inner circle of HOA board members. But they weren't alone. Behind them came a parade of vehicles filled with people I had never seen before. Within minutes, my peaceful property had been invaded by at least 30 strangers. I watched in disbelief as Margaret used a key to unlock my front door. She had somehow gotten a copy made, probably claiming some HOA emergency access nonsense. The crowd poured into my cabin like they owned the place, carrying coolers, party supplies, and speakers. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Tom. "Dude, Margaret told everyone you gave permission for her daughter's engagement party at your place. People are setting up everywhere." I immediately called Margaret. She answered on the first ring, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Oh Jake, I hope you don't mind, but we had a little mix-up with the venue for Stephanie's engagement party. I knew you wouldn't mind helping out a neighbor in need. We'll clean everything up, I promise." "Margaret, you broke into my house. This is trespassing and you know it." Now Jake, don't be dramatic. The HOA bylaws clearly state that in community emergencies, the board has access rights. This is a community emergency. Poor Stephanie's party would have been ruined. That's not how laws work, Margaret. You have 30 minutes to get everyone out or I'm calling the police." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh Jake, you clearly don't understand how things work around here. We're having this party whether you like it or not. Sue me if you don't like it." Then she hung up on me. I sat in my truck in the grocery store parking lot, watching through my security cameras as strangers trampled through my home, used my bathroom, raided my refrigerator, and sprawled across my furniture with their muddy shoes. Margaret stood in my living room like a queen holding court, directing people where to put decorations and laughing with her friends about something that was probably me. That's when I remembered something important. When I had bought the cabin, the previous owner had shown me some special features that came with the property. He had been a bit paranoid about break-ins and had installed several harmless but effective deterrent systems throughout the house. I had never activated them, but I still had the control app on my phone. A slow smile spread across my face as I opened the app and began planning Margaret's surprise. The first system was in the living room, hidden speakers that could play sounds at specific frequencies and volumes. The second was a network of motion-activated sprinkler systems designed to look like they were for plants but actually positioned to spray anyone in certain areas. The third was my personal favorite, remote-controlled outlets that could cut power to specific areas of the house. But the crown jewel was the fog machine system. The previous owner had been really paranoid and had installed industrial-grade fog machines in the ventilation system that could fill the entire house with harmless but thick fog in under 2 minutes. It was originally designed to confuse intruders, but it would work perfectly for unwanted party guests. I decided to drive back to my cabin and watch the show in person. I parked across the street where I could see everything but stayed hidden behind some trees. Through my windows I could see Margaret's party in full swing. People were dancing, laughing, and clearly having a great time in my home without my permission. It was time to crash their party. I started small. Using my phone, I activated the hidden speakers and began playing a low-frequency humming sound, just barely audible but annoying enough to make people uncomfortable. Within minutes, I saw guests looking around confused, touching their ears and asking each other if they heard something weird. Margaret waved dismissively when someone mentioned it. It's probably just the old house settling. Don't worry about it. Next, I activated the motion sensors for the sprinkler system in the dining room, where a group of people were crowded around my dining table with food and drinks. The first person to walk through the sensor beam got hit with a perfectly aimed spray of water right across their back. "What the hell?" the man shouted, spinning around to find the source. Before anyone could figure out what happened, 2 more people triggered different sensors and got soaked. Chaos erupted as people started slipping on the wet floor and scrambling to protect the food in their clothes. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her face turning red. Someone must have left a window open. It's probably just rain coming in. But there wasn't a cloud in the sky and everyone knew it. I decided to escalate things. I cut the power to the living room, plunging the main party area into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, but it was dim and gave everything an eerie feeling. The music stopped and people began murmuring nervously. "It's just a power surge," Margaret announced, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. "Jake's probably got faulty wiring in this old place." That's when I activated my masterpiece, the fog machine system. Thick, white fog began pouring out of the air vents throughout the house. Within 60 seconds, visibility dropped to about 3 feet. People started coughing and stumbling around, bumping into furniture and each other. The emergency lighting created weird shadows in the fog, making everything look like a horror movie. "Fire! There must be a fire," someone screamed. Panic set in immediately. People began pushing toward the exits, but the fog was so thick they could barely see where they were going. I heard crashes as they knocked over my furniture and belongings in their rush to escape. Through it all, I could hear Margaret's voice getting higher and more frantic. "Everyone stay calm. It's not fire. It's just. But she couldn't explain what it was because she had no idea what was happening. The fog was harmless, just theatrical fog like they use in concerts. But it looked terrifying to people who thought they might be in danger. Within 5 minutes, my cabin had cleared out completely as 30 party guests stampeded for their cars, coughing and stumbling and looking like they had barely escaped a disaster. I watched from my hiding spot as car after car peeled out of my driveway, leaving behind coolers, decorations, and personal belongings in their panic to escape. Margaret was the last to leave, standing beside her Mercedes and staring at my cabin as fog continued to pour out of every window and door. She pulled out her phone and called someone, probably the fire department. But by the time they arrived 20 minutes later, I had shut off the fog machines and turned the power back on. The fog had mostly cleared, and my cabin looked perfectly normal except for the mess left behind by the panic party guests. I waited until the fire department finished their inspection and declared everything safe before I casually drove up to my own driveway. I played the confused homeowner perfectly, expressing shock and concern that someone had broken into my house and apparently had some kind of emergency. The fire chief, a friendly man named Captain Rodriguez, shook his head as he packed up his equipment. "Strangest thing I've ever seen, Jake. Your neighbor called saying there was a fire, but we can't find any source of smoke or flames. Everything checks out fine. Looks like someone had a party here though." "A party? In my house?" I made sure to sound appropriately outraged. "I've been gone all day. Who would do something like that?" Captain Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Well, the woman who called it in, Margaret something, she seemed to know a lot about what was happening inside your house. You might want to check if anything's missing." After the fire department left, I surveyed the damage. My living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Furniture was overturned, there was food and drinks spilled everywhere, and several of my belongings were broken. But the real treasure was what the panic party guests had left behind. Margaret's purse sat on my kitchen counter, apparently forgotten in her rush to escape. Inside, along with her wallet and keys, I found a handwritten note with detailed plans for future HOA interventions in my property, including something about installing surveillance cameras to monitor suspicious activity. I also found 3 phones, 2 jackets, an expensive-looking watch, and someone's car keys. But the best discovery was a small recording device that had apparently been placed under my coffee table. Margaret had been planning to record conversations in my own home. The next morning, Margaret showed up at my door with 2 police officers. She looked haggard, like she hadn't slept, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. "Officers, this man sabotaged my daughter's engagement party. He deliberately created some kind of dangerous situation that could have killed people." The older officer, Sergeant Williams, looked skeptical. "Ma'am, we've been through this. The fire department found no evidence of any dangerous conditions. And you still haven't explained how you got into Mr. Jake's house in the first place." Margaret's face flushed. "I told you I have HOA access rights." "Actually, ma'am, you don't. I checked with the county, and HOA bylaws don't override property rights or trespassing laws." "Did Mr. Jake give you permission to enter his home?" "Well, not exactly, but..." "So you're admitting you broke into his house without permission and brought 30 people with you?" Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I stepped forward and handed the officers Margaret's purse and the other items left behind. "I found these in my house after the incident. I assume people will want their belongings back." But then I held up the recording device. "I also found this hidden under my furniture. I think someone was planning to illegally record conversations in my home." Margaret went pale. That's not. I don't know how that got there." Sergeant Williams examined the device, then looked at Margaret with a very serious expression. "Ma'am, illegal surveillance is a felony in this state. We're going to need to have a longer conversation about this." As the police led Margaret away for questioning, she turned back to me with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over, Jake. I'll make sure you regret this." But it was over. Margaret was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, illegal surveillance, and harassment. The HOA board voted to remove her as president, and several of her co-conspirators resigned in embarrassment. The story spread through Pine Ridge community like wildfire. Within a week, everyone knew about Margaret's illegal party and dramatic downfall. Most of my neighbors came by to apologize for her behavior and to thank me for finally standing up to her tyranny. Tom, my neighbor, brought me a six-pack of beer and laughed as he recounted the story. "Dude, you should have seen Margaret's face when she came stumbling out of your house looking like she'd seen a ghost. And the way everyone was coughing and running around in that fog, it was like something out of a movie." The new HOA president, a reasonable woman named Linda, made it her first official act to implement new policies preventing board members from accessing private property without explicit written permission and proper legal procedures. Margaret eventually pled guilty to reduced charges and was ordered to pay for all the damage to my property, plus court costs and fines. She also had to issue a public apology to the entire community for her abuse of power. But the best part was yet to come. A month later, I received a call from a local television news station. Someone had leaked security camera footage of Margaret's party disaster, and they wanted to do a story about HOA overreach. The footage of 30 people stumbling around in thick fog, bumping into furniture and fleeing in panic had gone viral online. "It's like a real-life Home Alone," the reporter told me. "People are calling you a hero for standing up to HOA bullies." The story aired on the evening news and was picked up by national media. Within days, I was getting calls from people across the country who had their own HOA horror stories. My little cabin became famous as the place where one homeowner finally fought back and won. Margaret, meanwhile, became a laughingstock. The viral video followed her everywhere, and she eventually moved out of Pine Ridge community entirely. Last I heard, she was living in a condo somewhere with no HOA and definitely no community events. As for me, I still live in my cabin by the lake. The security systems remain in place just in case, but I've never had to use them again. The new HOA leadership respects property rights, and Pine Ridge community has become the peaceful neighborhood it was always supposed to be. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when I'm sitting by my fireplace, I pull up that viral video on my phone and watch Margaret stumbling around in the fog one more time. It never gets old. And whenever I see a new for sale sign in the neighborhood, I make sure to introduce myself to the new neighbors and share the story of how one woman's greed and power hunger led to the most spectacular HOA downfall in internet history. Because sometimes when someone pushes you too far, the best revenge is giving them exactly what they deserve. A taste of their own medicine served with a side of poetic justice and a thick cloud of harmless but terrifying fog. Margaret learned the hard way that when you break into someone's home uninvited, you better be prepared for whatever surprises might be waiting for you inside. And in my case, those surprises were designed by a security expert who knew exactly how to turn the tables on an unwanted intruder. The moral of the story? Never underestimate a quiet neighbor, especially one who knows how to rig the perfect trap.